The Arctic is melting, and as the ice retreats, a new geopolitical frontier is opening. The world's superpowers are already making their moves. Back in 2019, Donald Trump seriously suggested that the US should buy Greenland.
And that's the reason I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland by the United States.
It sounded absurd, almost like a joke.
And I guess when he first raised it, people thought he was joking. He said, can we buy Greenland? And they thought he was joking. And then he kept coming back to it. And the report, at least, is he's asked his White House counsel to look into the legality of maybe buying Greenland.
Can we buy the Maldives? I desperately need a vacation.
But underneath, it revealed something deeper. New shipping routes, vast oil and gas reserves, and crucial military positions are turning the Arctic into the planet's final land rush. But who actually owns the Arctic? How far will nations go to claim it? And what happens when old treaties collide with a rapidly changing reality? This is the story of why the coldest place on Earth has suddenly become the world's hottest territory. For most of history, the Arctic was protected by nature itself, frozen, dark, and almost unreachable for much of the year. But that natural barrier is disappearing. Due to accelerating climate change, the Arctic is warming nearly 4 times faster than the global average. Ice that once lasted year-round now melts in the summer, and the legendary Arctic Passage is no longer a fantasy. This is opening up something extraordinary, an entirely new ocean. The Northern Sea Route along Russia's coast and the Northwest Passage through Canada's Arctic islands are becoming navigable for longer periods each year. These routes can cut shipping times between Europe and Asia by up to 40%, avoiding the Suez Canal and steering clear of geopolitical hotspots like the South China Sea. For global trade, this is a game changer. For geopolitics, it's a strategic earthquake. Whoever controls these new routes controls the future of shipping, and with it, a significant portion of global power. But this isn't just about sea lanes. As the ice retreats, it exposes untapped riches. Up to 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and 30% of its natural gas could lie beneath the Arctic seabed. That's a resource goldmine. Countries have taken notice. Russia has declared the Northern Sea Route a national priority and is building a fleet of nuclear-powered icebreakers. In 2007, it even planted a titanium Russian flag on the seafloor beneath the North Pole, a symbolic claim. Russia is also constructing military bases and deploying Arctic-trained troops. China, despite having no Arctic territory, calls itself a near-Arctic state and is investing billions in infrastructure, satellites, and scientific research, embedding itself in the region's future. Beneath the Arctic's icy surface lies a staggering economic prize. According to the US Geological Survey, the Arctic holds an estimated 13% of the world's undiscovered oil, 30% of its untapped natural gas, and vast reserves of critical minerals like rare earth elements, gold, and nickel. For nations seeking energy security or strategic materials, the Arctic could be a jackpot. But extracting these resources is not simple. Extreme conditions, high costs, and environmental risks have long made Arctic drilling a high-stakes gamble. Still, as technology improves and the ice recedes, what once seemed impossible is starting to look inevitable. Russia is already developing offshore oil and gas, especially through projects like Yamal LNG, supported by Chinese funding. These projects are more than economic ventures. They're geopolitical tools, tying together energy, infrastructure, and military influence. The US, through Alaska, is also pushing exploration. In 2023, the Biden administration approved the controversial Willow Project, a major development in the Alaskan Arctic. Environmental groups called it a carbon bomb, but supporters argued it was vital for energy independence and competition in the region. Norway is expanding oil exploration in the Barents Sea and investing in deep-sea mining. Canada and Denmark are also moving forward, often clashing with indigenous communities and environmental organizations. The Arctic's riches aren't just underground. Melting ice opens new fishing zones and changing ecosystems, sparking disputes over who gets access to these emerging resources. And here's the twist. Exploiting these fossil fuels could accelerate the very climate change that made them accessible in the first place. The Arctic isn't just warming, it's militarizing. And every major power wants a piece of it. Russia has the largest Arctic footprint. Nearly half the Arctic coastline is Russian territory, and Moscow has spent the last decade rebuilding Soviet-era bases, deploying missile systems, expanding radar networks, and operating the world's biggest fleet of nuclear icebreakers. It even created a dedicated Arctic military command. With growing isolation from the West, Russia sees the Arctic as a strategic space with fewer limits and more opportunity. The United States reacted slower, but its stance has shifted quickly. Washington now sees the Arctic as a critical security frontier. New icebreakers, upgraded bases, and expanded surveillance are underway. Alaska is now a front line rather than a distant outpost, but U.S. ambitions stretch beyond Alaska. Recent Senate discussions have revived the debate over Greenland's strategic value. What once sounded unrealistic now reflects real national security concerns. Greenland sits beside emerging Arctic trade routes, hosts the vital Thule Air Base, and holds major deposits of rare earth minerals, resources essential for advanced technology that the U.S. mostly relies on China for. With Russia expanding militarily and China deepening its Arctic presence, Greenland becomes a geopolitical shield the U.S. can't afford to ignore, even as Denmark and Greenland insist sovereignty is non-negotiable. China, calling itself a near-Arctic state, has built research stations, launched satellites, and partnered with Russia on infrastructure and energy projects. Its Polar Silk Road aims to integrate the Arctic into global trade and secure long-term influence. NATO's presence is also growing. Norway is increasing patrols, Canada is upgrading defenses, and with Finland and Sweden joining, the alliance now surrounds almost the entire European Arctic, reshaping the region's balance of power. The problem is simple. Unlike Antarctica, the Arctic has no treaty limiting militarization. A legal vacuum is forming, and every power is moving to fill it. The Arctic Council, once a rare platform for cooperation, has stalled since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, removing one of the region's few stabilizing mechanisms. As superpowers move in, the Arctic is becoming more crowded, more contested, and more unpredictable. The next major geopolitical standoff may not erupt in the South China Sea, but in the frozen north. The Arctic may look empty, but legally, it's one of the most complicated regions on Earth. Borders overlap, claims collide, and no one fully agrees on where one nation's rights end and another's begin. UNCLOS, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, gives coastal states a 200 nautical mile zone of resource control. But if nations can prove their continental shelf extends farther, their claims can stretch much deeper into the Arctic Ocean. Russia, Canada, and Denmark all claim their continental shelves reach the North Pole. None of these claims have been fully resolved. The United States faces an unusual disadvantage. It never ratified UNCLOS, limiting its ability to compete legally with other Arctic nations. Meanwhile, the Arctic Council, once a rare forum for cooperation, has fractured. Western nations paused collaboration with Russia after the Ukraine invasion, removing one of the few stabilizing institutions in the region. Indigenous communities, who have lived in the Arctic for thousands of years, often see their rights overshadowed by the interests of powerful states and corporations. And without clear rules, the risks multiply. A misinterpreted patrol, a disputed fishing zone, a survey ship crossing into contested waters. In a region this sensitive, even a misunderstanding can spiral. The Arctic is no longer a blank spot on the map. It has become a geopolitical pressure point, a resource frontier, and a strategic chessboard, all created by melting ice. Whoever controls this new ocean will influence global trade. Whoever claims its resources will shape future industries. And whoever dominates the region militarily may define the next era of geopolitics. The Arctic is changing faster than any other place on Earth. The question isn't who owns it, it's who gets there first, and what they're willing to risk to keep it. If you found this breakdown helpful, consider subscribing for more stories that explain complex global issues clearly, visually, and with the full picture in mind.